Afternoon, the sunlight spilling through the apartment window and casting long shadows across the living room floor. The little girl Saturday curled on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest, staring at the worn carpet as if it held answers to unspoken questions. Her small voice broke the quiet, "Mommy, do you think God forgot us?" Her father, sitting in the armchair opposite her, felt the words settle heavily in the room. He had heard similar questions in her eyes before, in the quiet moments between chores, homework, and bedtime stories. This time, though, it cut deeper. The weight of bills, missed opportunities, and sleepless nights pressed down on him, yet he knew he couldn't let it show. He knelt beside her, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "No," he said gently, letting his hand rest over hers. "God doesn't forget us. Sometimes life is hard, and it feels like help isn't coming, but we're never really alone." He paused, searching for words that could carry the truth he lived by even when the world seemed unfair. "And even when it feels like the world has forgotten, we have each other. That's something nobody can take away." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and she leaned into his side, seeking the warmth and safety only he could provide. He felt a surge of determination. Words alone weren't enough, she needed to feel hope in action, not just in speech. "Come on," he said, standing and taking her tiny hand. They moved to the kitchen together, where he opened cupboards and the refrigerator, gathering what little they had: a can of beans, a few slices of bread, and a half-empty jar of peanut butter. He worked deliberately, showing her how to make a simple, hearty meal out of scarcity, as if teaching her resilience one step at a time. When he placed the modest dinner before her, he smiled despite the weariness lining his face. "See," he said softly, "sometimes God's care comes in small ways. A warm meal, a hug, someone who loves you no matter what. That's never forgotten." She nodded slowly, a tentative smile breaking through, her trust in him unwavering. In that moment, the room, though small and cluttered, felt full of light. Even in the quiet struggle of their lives, love, shown through action and presence, spoke louder than any fear. And together, father and daughter, they discovered a simple truth: they were seen, they were loved, and they were never truly forgotten. Small, cluttered office tucked above a busy street. The hum of fluorescent lights mixed with the soft tapping of keyboards and the occasional murmur of colleagues talking about deadlines. He stepped inside, shaking off the chill of the morning, and set down his worn briefcase. Papers were stacked haphazardly on his desk, a mix of invoices, notices, and scribbled reminders. He ran a hand through his hair and let out a quiet sigh, the weight of responsibility pressing on him like a tangible thing. His co-workers greeted him with nods and brief smiles, but he barely noticed. His mind was elsewhere, on his daughter, on making sure she had breakfast, on keeping the small apartment from falling apart financially. He had learned long ago that the world didn't pause for worry, it demanded action. The morning passed in a blur of calls, emails, and hurried problem solving. He moved with precision, his mind compartmentalizing each task, yet a part of him lingered on the thought of his little girl. Around mid-morning, he received a message from her teacher. She had been quiet at school, staring out the window for long stretches, and had asked about her mother again. He felt a pang in his chest but refused to let it paralyze him. Instead, he made a plan. During his lunch break, he visited a nearby shop and picked up a small bouquet of her favorite flowers, daisies bright and cheerful. He knew it wasn't much, but he wanted her to know she was seen, remembered, and loved, even when the world felt heavy. After work, he hurried to the school, weaving through the afternoon crowd. When he finally saw her waiting near the gate, she ran toward him, eyes wide with curiosity and hope. He knelt down, handing her the daisies. "These are for you," he said softly. Her face lit up in a way that made all the exhaustion in his body vanish, even if just for a moment. She clutched the flowers, inhaling the scent like they carried a piece of magic. "Thank you, Daddy," she whispered, her voice small but earnest. He hugged her tightly, feeling the warmth of her tiny body against his chest. "I'll always be here, sweetheart. No matter what. We take it one day at a time, together." As they walked home, the city around them seemed less intimidating. The weight of absence and worry was still there, but in small acts, flowers, presents, and love, it felt manageable. And in that simple, shared walk, he knew he was answering questions no words could fully reach. They were not forgotten, and neither was hope. Front door clicked shut behind the father and his daughter. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of freshly baked bread from a nearby bakery and the faint tang of the city waking up. The little girl's hand clutched his tightly, her tiny fingers curling around his as if afraid he might slip away. "Are you going to be late for work today?" she asked softly, her voice barely above the hum of traffic. He shook his head with a tired smile. "No, I'll be fine. Just a busy day ahead, that's all." He glanced down at her, noticing how her eyes scanned the street like she was searching for something beyond the cracks in the sidewalk. Something invisible. Something she didn't know how to name. The walk to school was quiet, filled with small observations that only a child notices, the flutter of pigeons across the square, the glint of sunlight on a puddle from last night's rain, the smell of exhaust mixed with baking bread. He pointed out a stray cat perched on a wall. "Look, she's waiting for breakfast too," he said. She giggled softly, a sound that seemed to momentarily ease the weight in his chest. At the school gates, other children ran past, laughing and shouting, their parents waving goodbye. The little girl hesitated, her small body tense. "Will you come back for me at lunch?" she asked. "Of course," he replied, kneeling to meet her gaze. "I'll be right here, just like always." He tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear and gave her a quick hug, careful not to crush the small backpack she was wearing. She let out a small sigh, relief flickering across her face, and ran toward her friends. He watched her go, the way her tiny frame bounced with each step, and felt a familiar pang of both pride and worry. Then, turning toward the street, he began his brisk walk to work, shoulders squared against the cold wind, mind already juggling the day's tasks, calls to make, deliveries to check, and bills that refused to wait. As he walked, he noticed a man sitting on a bench, shivering in a tattered coat. Something about the man's posture, a slumped, defeated air, made him pause. Without thinking, he reached into his pocket and found an extra pair of gloves. "Here," he said quietly, handing them to the man. The man looked up, surprised, then offered a grateful, almost shy smile. Walking away, the father felt a strange warmth settle in his chest. Acts of care, even small ones, reminded him that the world wasn't entirely cold or cruel. Maybe God hadn't forgotten him after all. Scene 1 opened in the early morning stillness of a small, weathered apartment. The city outside was waking slowly, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional bark of a dog, and the faint clatter of someone opening their shop. Inside, the apartment smelled faintly of last night's dinner and laundry detergent. A single bed Saturday against the far wall, crumpled sheets betraying the restless sleep of a little girl. She stirred, blinking sleep from her eyes, and clutched a worn stuffed bear tightly to her chest. Her small feet padded across the cold wooden floor to the kitchen, where a single figure moved silently. Her father, shoulders hunched from years of hard work, was already at the stove. His hands, rough and calloused, worked methodically, flipping eggs in a small pan. Even before he turned, she knew the familiar rhythm of his morning, the quiet hum, the soft scrape of utensils, the gentle hum of a man trying to hold everything together. "Good morning, sweetheart," he said finally, turning toward her with a small, tired smile. His eyes were kind but carried the weight of sleepless nights and worry over bills. The little girl's lips quivered into a smile that was more out of habit than joy, and she climbed onto a chair at the small kitchen table. "Morning, Daddy," she whispered, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. He served her a plate, modest but carefully prepared, and she ate slowly, her small hands picking at the edges of the food. He watched her in silence, aware of the unspoken questions that lingered in her mind, the ones she would never voice in daylight. He wanted to tell her that everything would be okay, that their little apartment, the small meals, the quiet mornings, were part of something bigger, even if he didn't fully believe it himself. Outside, sunlight streamed through the grimy window, falling across the chipped countertop and illuminating the small cracks in the walls. But in that light, there was also warmth, a quiet reminder that life continued despite hardship. After breakfast, he knelt down beside her chair, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Ready for school?" he asked gently. She nodded, her small hand slipping into his. He tightened his grip slightly, as if transferring a piece of his strength into hers. As they walked toward the door, the city's morning bustle seemed to fade around them. In that small, fleeting moment, the father and daughter were not just surviving, they were holding on to each other, one careful step at a time, in a world that often seemed to forget them.